Welcome to the Housing Digital Micro Conference on the Building Safety Act, the future of compliance in housing. With the Building Safety Act now fully operational, it is important to understand just what this new legislation will mean for housing. In this session this morning, we will highlight the challenges that lie ahead for providers and how they can utilize data and IoT technology to prepare for the changes. Housing providers are already seeing the benefits of remote monitoring technology, such as deterring issues before they arise. This session will explore how such innovation will prove pivotal as the Building Safety Act comes into force, ushering in a new era of housing compliance. I'm very excited today to hear from 4 keynote speakers. So we'll move on to our fourth and final keynote presentation. I'm delighted to introduce Heidi Flack. Heidi is the Director of Compliance and Building Safety at Anchor Housing Group.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me along.
You're very welcome. Are you free to share your screen, Heidi?
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I am Heidi Flack, Director of Compliance and Building Safety at Anchor, and I'm here just to talk to you around our experiences, really, and what a great idea this was, because I've been learning a lot as I've been going along some great networking as well. So what we do within Anchor is, for those that don't know us, we are the largest provider of housing for the later life, as we like to call it, so 55 and over, and we have and manage 54,000 homes across 1,700 sites. So that's more than 65,000 residents. So today, really, in an ageing society, our housing care and support is needed more than ever. We're finding that obviously there's a lot of complex needs. We're not just your traditional housing association, and obviously on a national role as well. We also have 120 care homes which operate across 85% of the local councils in England. So very challenging and totally unique type of association, really, in the sense that we do have a number of varying needs across our stock. So our business plan, just to provide you with a very, very busy slide, and I can certainly say that this is part of what we do, is probably around the more and better homes, which is the area that I'm focusing on today, which is building safety is a key element of this, as you can imagine. And just as a fact, I found out the other day that we currently carry out around 250 services of some sort or other per day. That's quite incredible, and I'm sure there's other organisations that do that, but that actually put it into context for me. That's an awful lot, and obviously carries risk with that. But we are here, obviously, to become more efficient is just, I think, goes without saying these days. We're all under the pressure, certainly when it comes to the money and finances. And we like to hope that we can hopefully influence the sector and provide opportunities for our colleagues, which is in line with our training and skills plans and career progression. So where I fit in is a brand new role. Been in post about 9 months, and it's similar to Taurus, whereby building safety was taken out of the health and safety role and put into a compliance and building safety. It was recognised that it is different and it's not the same as health and safety, and so that was the decision was made, and I came into post last year around November time. So I sit within the property directorate, property and assets, and we obviously feed into the delivery team, which then ultimately provides us with a service for our customers within Anchor, and hopefully making their experience better and ensuring that they remain safe in their homes. So the stock, as I said, is very complex. This gives you a little bit of a taste. It's currently, we have retirement housing for rent, we have leasehold sales, we have shared ownership, residential care homes, retirement housing to rent, and also retirement villages, which are unique in themselves for us, which we have 3, whereby you can have anything from swimming pool to a cinema, restaurant, etc. So there is a lot going on, and obviously that then has its challenges to manage. But ultimately, we do provide a wide range, and also respite care and specialist dementia care. So very, very wide ranging and different in each one. So I thought I'd like to highlight today around, it follows on nicely actually from Andy's presentation from BTP Architects, because we've also been through our HRRB stock. We're lucky that we only have 7 within Anchor. but we are acquiring others, because obviously in London we have to allow for high rise, which I did put in the chat that to do the due diligence is absolutely critical, because you could be taking on all sorts if it is an older building. And we have found exactly the same experience, whereby we have uncovered an awful lot. But what we did was we made the decision to do pre-construction works. So we went out to tender, and that was to enable us to understand our building integrity, understand what's needed, and that's currently going on now at 6 of our blocks. And what that is to allow us to really look at the cost and what's required, because although yes, there's a cost to have that work done, it's allowing us to really investigate what the fabric of the building is, because without that we just don't know. And it has come into its own already, because we have found where the drawings show that there should have been fire stopping and there isn't. The external wall insulation surveys have all been done, and that's been in hand, but this is more going intrusive surveys and so on. This is all while the buildings are occupied. So we've had to do an awful lot around resident engagement, and there is a specialist team who are involved in all of this. I have a building safety team who are dedicated to this part of the world, and they are qualified and skilled and carry out a lot of surveys as well. We also have just created a customer and quality coordinator role, who a lady called Sarah Jane, who is responsible for looking and face-to-face meetings with the residents. And currently they're 6 weekly, but that is a bit of a challenge to resource, as you can imagine. And we chose face-to-face because of differing needs, but we are looking at ways of other channels of how to work with our residents and engage further, because not everybody wants to use technology, not everybody wants to use the internet. So we recognise that we've got to do a lot of work with our residents teams to understand how they want to be communicated with. So within there, we also found that a lot of our residents are they could be lawyers, they could be surveyors, and so on. So very challenging. And I've been in meetings whereby they know their stuff and will challenge you, and will obviously want to know exactly what's going on. And also within home ownership, it can be a challenge, because obviously this is a big significant cost in some cases to some. So we have to work very carefully with that. So I think there's a number of things going on, and also the building safety regulator relationship. We're one of the early adopters. We have submitted a safety case. One was rejected due to a information requirement that we hadn't quite got right, and that then has to go through the process again, which you can imagine that's a very lengthy process anyway. So you have to be very mindful of that. I think the current dates is showing around 6 months waiting to have that case adopted. And I can understand with the regulator that's quite a task that they've had to take on. So I totally understand why it's taking so long, but you just have to allow for that within your plans and projects. So within there's the art of the possible, which I've called it that because we are currently in a journey at the moment, and we are looking at ways of how to improve the way that we manage our our data, manage everything that we have, and also make life easier for our residents and tenants. And we've just implementing Plentific. We are starting that now, and we also are going with TCW, which is the automated software certification reader, which I believe is going to help us enormously, because we have a lot of certification going through very manual processes. I'm sure you've all been there, but it's very, very hard if you haven't got one version of the truth, which others have talked about. We are also looking at working with Switchy on a pilot, which I've been discussing this morning, and I'm also learning around AI and seeing how that can help. And then the Internet of Things, which obviously you'll all be aware of, and then the way that we manage and remotely manage our homes and properties. And then ultimately just working with residents to work out how they want data to be provided. It's not a case of always being able to just give things over the internet. And as I said earlier, it's how do we do that? And certainly ensuring that we have information available on, say, a portal, and how people want to access that or not. But the challenges, I think this is something that I certainly am finding as we go through a great deal of change within Anchor. The resources from our central support is enormous. And it's a big requirement, and Plentific is obviously quite an ask on them, and it's how we work in more effectively with our teams, and we have had to bring in additional resource, etc. So that is certainly something that we've found, something we've had to allow for rather with our resources and budgets. Data management and cost control is incredibly difficult when you don't have great data and you're trying to work out how much things are going to cost. So for instance, I mentioned the villages that we have, they have very complex needs, and it's really understanding that and the service regimes and everything else that comes with it. So that's what we're looking at now. The new regulations has been a steep learning curve, I think, for all of us, and continues to be. And it's just working through that and allowing enough time, but very challenging, I'm sure, for everybody. Communication and engagement is something that I really want to improve, the way that we as a team communicate, but not only that, but have a good relationship with our residents and tenants where they influence what we're doing. We know that we need to do that through the Social Housing Act, but it's really a case of, how are you going to do that in reality? So we are putting all sorts of measures in place and a lot of face-to-face meetings where we can. People and culture is a huge thing that will obviously affect any organisation, and it's something that's really important to have qualified and skilled people, but also people that have bought into the new need for technology and changing the way that we work, etc. And then at the top there, I've put diversity of residents and complex services, which I've mentioned. And these all, to me, allow us to provide safe homes, which is what this is all about. So my final slide was really never forget the why. My team will know that I am very passionate about this. This is something that makes me quite emotional every time I consider those images in front of you. Grenfell is just absolutely shocking. The things that have come out of the inquest and the investigations and so on, I think has woke us all up, but it's 7 years ago now, and in reality we are only just getting to grips with some of this stuff. There's also Awab, who was a small child who died unnecessarily, and so many factors led to that death. I was on a call last week as part of the Disrupted Innovators Network, and one of the exec directors was presenting about the case. She was actually part of that and leading on this whole thing, and she had to sit with the Awab's mother while the poor mother was distraught and screaming and crying, and I hope I never ever have to be that person. So I've put these on here really just to say that both of these acts were avoidable, and I never ever want to make that mistake. And so don't forget the why. And if I can just say there, thank you very much for listening. And there's really just, I think, there's a lot going on in the organisation and the sector. So having things like this, I think, really does help us all. So thank you very much. And any questions?
Thank you for that, Heidi, and a solemn reminder as to our why at the end there. We have got a question. We have got a hand raised from Ian Hardman. What's your question, please?
Yeah, thanks. I'm Ian Harden, Director of Building Safety for the Riverside Group. So I know you've got a lot of diverse customers, particularly in the kit and support portfolio. So how are you meeting the requirements around Section 156 around communicating the outcomes of your inspections, particularly to vulnerable customers?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we are doing a lot whereby it's actually we will have things printed a lot of the time. Certainly within the areas where there'll be someone available to be able to talk through things. But what we're looking at, to be honest, Ian, is we know we've got to do some improvement. So what we're looking at is how do we communicate that? We are looking at obviously technology, so having a portal whereby people can access that data, but also I think we've got to go further than that because of the vulnerability of people in our homes, and it is just really working with them. So do we provide leaflets, which some people don't like or don't read? Do we do we just do bespoke letters, which again is just the resource and the admin and everything else? But I think it is a case of I'd love to hear others' experience, but at the moment very much relying on face-to-face and the written word.
So just on that, so are you communicating the outcome of every FRA now to your customers? And because obviously that is a
No.
legal requirement now.
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
just wondering your approach around that.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're doing that, but we're also telling them the outcome of all of our inspections, asbestos surveys, Legionella as part of that.
That is certainly that's our plan. Absolutely. We're not yet, only because the data just isn't quite there ready yet, but it is a legal requirement, as you said. And I think the ultimate goal is to have the portal where it's all there and it's all readily available. At this moment in time, we tend to rely on having the information available on notice boards or in an office, etc., which is, I appreciate, a bit old-fashioned these days, but it works and it ticks the box. But we know that we need to perhaps improve a little on that.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you for your question, Ian. Have we got any more questions for Heidi, please?
It's Mark Cantrell, editor of Housing Digital again. I was just listening to a lot of you talking, the complexity of your customers and how you're going on a journey for technology. I was just wondering, how do you balance all those different needs? I mean, whether you use technology or the face-to-face communications, how do you balance all that? I mean, you've got people with dementia, you've got older people who may have some care needs, but they're fully compos mentis, and as you said earlier, professional people who know what they're talking about in the relevant field. So how do you balance all that?
It's very, very challenging, and we do have obviously various forums, and we do have a resident council, we have resident groups which I'm working with, we have a comms group, and that's where I'm going to be taking that through, is through the tenant communication group. And I want to know from them, what do they need, because we're looking at our e-leaflets at the moment, information about how that can be presented. But then it's like we use a lot around pictures. I don't know if you've seen what's come out from the one of the groups, whereby it's all there's no words at all, it's all in pictures in relation to gas servicing and so on. It's one of those where I thought, oh wow, that's really clever, because actually you can use that for many different audiences. But I think for me, it's just really understanding what people want, because speaking to our chair of one of our groups, I was mentioning about leaflets, and she was saying, well, people don't read them and they don't like them. So this was in relation to fire inspections. A lot of people, I don't know how you guys are finding it, but a lot of people are frightened by the stay put policies because of Grenfell. They say, well, I don't want to stay in my flat if there's a fire. So we have to explain. And so what our chair asked was, could the fire inspector explain when they're there, instead of just whizzing in and doing the fire inspection? Could they then spend some time and talk to us? I thought, what a simple idea. Of course, just communication while you're there. Hello, is there anything you need to know? We're also going back to the old-fashioned days of the TV screen in the communal area that's got the rolling information loop. And it is really just accepting that a lot of people don't use technology like we perhaps think they do sometimes. Doing a lot of work on it, basically.
Alan, have you got a question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Alan Coates, Compliance Property Manager, CBC. What we've done to try and do that in regards to the information is produce an information leaflet that is specifically explaining the stay put and stay safe, but and then we send that out with all the rent notices and stuff like that. But then again, when we do the door inspections, the officers doing the door inspections will go through that and give that information as well, and so they're able to talk that through. And we found that, especially within sheltered schemes, that they've been quite open to that, the residents in that sense.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't necessarily capture it, I guess, apart from
No.
that we can evidence that we've, issued those information. But
yeah, I mean, we do that. And we also have a good relationship with the fire service, and we do
Safe and
drop-ins,
well.
and we do yeah, absolutely. The trouble we have is that the feedback, and it could just be a couple of locations that have got this issue. I haven't got that far yet. The feedback has been that they don't read the leaflets, they're still frightened and worried about what to do. So I think what we need to remember is that they perhaps need far more hand-holding than what we thought and what we recognised, and constant reminder, isn't it, of that, rather than just the once, right, this is what we do, this is what, this is how it is. And obviously, with the stay put, you don't have to do an evacuation thing, but we perhaps need to still do a test to make sure they do stay put. It's things like that. That's the sort of regimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I felt that one of the things Vicky did was quite good. The drop-in surgeries
Yes.
would be quite useful on a sheltered scheme. That's something I might
Yeah,
look at.
yeah. We've certainly been doing that with these HIRBs, and that's where Sarah Jane in our team and the other guys in the team get involved, and that has been brilliant. We've also used it with fire service coming in and other ways, you know, to engage, and I've been to one or two, and you also get the resident involvement as well, and they want to be part of it. But yeah, I think the HRRBs in some ways is easier, and I will just say, while we're all on, I'm actually looking at our stock in a holistic view is on a risk-based process, because of all the complexities and the needs. I'm looking at it from risk rather than height. So, you know, obvious reasons. If you've got vulnerable people in a property, it could, you know, it heightens the need perhaps for different measures.
I did an exercise with a previous organisation I was with the fire service, and we produced a video in regards, that was about clutter within sheltered schemes within the corridors and stuff, and basically, you know, we did all the smoke and stuff, but I'll share that with you later when we outside of this, but that was quite good in you know, because it was all visual and someone talking to them as opposed to them reading something, and we could put that up in the sort of coffee lounge thing and that sort of thing, which was useful.
Yeah, and I know I'm conscious of time, but one thing I will say as well is something that TPAS, I was on one of their calls, and a lady was talking about, you know, we call customers, residents, tenants, whatever. At the end of the day, they're people and it's their home. And I know that resonated with me, that and keep it simple. You know, it's a person's home, keep it simple. Oh, and also the other thing is, of course, families. I didn't mention about dementia. Families tend to get really involved, obvious reasons, making sure their mums, dads, whatever relations are safe. So it tends to be around that, but we also have to have unique signage for that sort of facility as well anyway.
Excellent. Thank you for your question again, Alan. And thank you for a great presentation, Heidi.
Thank you.
Just to summarise today's micro conference, then we first heard from Nick Davis, who's the commercial director at Switchy. Nick introduced Switchy's platform and how they work with housing associations to provide warm, safe, and energy efficient homes. The technology that Switchy developed can be seen by the resident via a 4G connection and with the data gathered from their IoT sensors. Nick gave us a really cool case study of how the data can show patterns, which can not only improve the homes, but by adding new ventilation systems, for example, to prevent mold, obviously helping housing associations to create the strategies moving forward. We then heard from Vicky Houghton. Vicky was should say, the head of asset compliance at Taurus. Vicky delved into the strategy and the actions that Taurus have taken to respond to the Building Safety Act. In all parts of the business, Taurus have looked at how they can improve the process and the communication internally, as well as with residents externally, taking a full holistic approach to how to respond to building safety. Using tech, but also face-to-face interactions and various platforms to gather more data. Taurus are creating and improving continuously in building safety. Our third keynote was our architectural contribution from Andy Wan. Andy was the director of BTP Architects and looking at the on-site building aspects of the Building Safety Act and compliance from an architect's perspective. His presentation answered the question of what housing associations should be looking at when analysing their housing stock and identifying any non-compliance issues. The main takeaways we found from Andy's presentation was that we don't know what we're working with always. The correct team needs to be in place with the right qualifications. Good communication is key, and processes are in place, and to always keep in mind the phrase, do the right thing. And then our fourth and final keynote presentation was, of course, from Heidi Flack. Heidi is the Director of Compliance and Building Safety at Anchor Housing Group. Heidi introduced the policy within Anchor's building safety and how they have implemented this, how it is continuously improving to get the right balance of face-to-face engagement, tech, platforms, IoT, and on-site data to use it in the right way. Heidi talked about the art of the possible and how you can improve things within your own organisation. She summed up the whole point of this micro conference very well by reminding us to remember the why. With Glenfell and obviously hugely unnecessary deaths can be avoided, and that's why we're here and doing what we're doing. So big thank you to all 4 of our keynote presentations today. And just a quick reminder from me, a couple of things. A couple of dates for your diary. We have our Housing Innovation Show returning in 2025 on the 12th and 13th of Feb. Our brand new website for that is now live, www.housinginnovationshow.co.uk, a live event in person, 2 days. Huge showcase of innovation in the housing sector taking place at the ICC, which is where the National Housing Fed used to have their conference in Birmingham, central Birmingham. And also our next online micro conference, the 19th of September, all about regulation and making the grade. So thank you for everyone who attended today, and a big warm thank you to all our presenters as well. So thank you for attending. That wraps up today's micro conference. Thank you very much.